Hello, my name is Lucy Bailey. I am founder and chief executive of Bounce Forward, a charity that works with schools to encourage them to teach psychological fitness as part of the core curriculum, part of core education. But in my work over the last 20 years of studying this, I've done a lot of work on thinking about why this matters for all of us, why it matters for human beings. So I'm delighted to have been offered the opportunity to talk to you through this admin chat, to just talk about, first of all, what psychological fitness is, what I mean by it, and most importantly, the role of positive emotion. So thanks very much for the opportunity. And I wanted to start by saying that looking after ourselves matters. It matters, that just as much as looking after our physical health, making sure that we feel mentally well, that we feel that we can feel good and function well. And we know through the research that it matters for us as individuals. For those of us that pay more attention to looking after our well-being, we live longer, we have better general health, we have better relationships, we're more likely to be successful in our lives, based on what we believe is successful for us. We know that it has benefits for those around us because we are social beings and we model and pass on the information that we have. So, if you're thinking about that idea of how we sort of support each other in peer relationships, but also our family and friends, in terms of our close relationships, it matters for performance. So for organisations that invest in the well-being of their staff, and I don't mean just putting on a yoga class or Friday afternoons off, which would be amazing. And we all wish we could do that every week, but that's not the reality. But actually, it's about thinking about, how we develop psychological fitness, how we can make sure that we feel good and function well. And we know that those that invest in that, then performance increase because people have this sort of sense of who they are, sense of self-awareness, and they can put that into into their roles and into their performance. It matters for survival. Life is tough. And we have to deal with all sorts of external things that come at us. COVID-19 has been a perfect example of this, but there are many, many more. And how do we survive those? How do we survive the storms that we're faced? If we look after our well-being, then it means that we're able to deal with those a lot better. Doesn't mean to say that that nothing affects us. Life is still tough, but the way in which we're able to survive those things is increased. And where my work sits, where I'm most passionate about, is that it matters for thriving. Why should we only think about our psychological fitness for overcoming setbacks? We should also think about it in terms of making the most of opportunities, making the best version of ourselves, being the best version of ourselves. We can use those ideas that we know will help us survive. Those ideas will also allow us to really thrive and flourish in the world. So looking after you spending a few minutes with me just listening to, to what psychological fitness is, and particularly the role of positive emotion, is a good thing overall. And I'm sure lots of you already do amazing things to make sure that you look after your sort of physical fitness. But what do I mean by psychological fitness? So it's an umbrella term that we use that really brings together mental resilience and emotional intelligence. And both of these attributes are terms or attributes that are needed for success in the 21st century. We do a lot of work with behavioural scientists who say, if you go back 50 years, we needed physical strength for success. And by we, I mean human beings. If you go back 20 years, we needed intellectual strength for success. Now, and moving into the 21st century, we need psychological strength, that ability to have mental agility, to be able to be mentally resilient to the things that come at us, and not just to overcome setbacks, to also to make the most of opportunities, that we're mentally agile in order to be able to deal with the ever-changing world. And the emotional intelligence side of things, computers, technology is going to do things way faster and smarter than human beings are going to be able to. So that idea of emotions, the ability to have empathy for other people, the ability to care about things, the ability to be self-aware around the sorts of emotions that I can experience and the impact of those. These are key attributes that are needed for the 21st century. We're going to be able to deal with life better and not, and pressures at work and life better. We're going to be able to adapt and respond to the change around us. We're going to create greater capacity for things like empathy and hope and optimism in the world. And most importantly, I think that we're going to be able to develop and be more proactive agents for change. Rather than just receiving information, we're actually able to take the reins of it, to say, no, that this is what needs to change and why. So our work, our sort of interpretation, if you like, of mental resilience and emotional intelligence are these 5 competencies. These are areas that we are really encouraging to be taught in schools as part of core education. Children should be taught from a very young age, alongside maths and English, how to think flexibly and realistically. That self-awareness and compassion, how to self-regulate, that is to calm down emotions that are strong, but also recognising the benefits of delayed gratification. Quick is not always best, certainly in terms of our psychological fitness and our well-being. So these are the competencies really that all of our work is trying to encourage. These are like the behaviours that once people have learnt them and they start to bring them in, they just become their tools for living. They're so ingrained in the way in which we respond that we're just able to draw on them without even really giving it much attention. And I wanted to focus in today on the role of positive emotion. So really bringing in the idea of self-regulation, self-awareness, but also it plays into hope and optimism, into human connection, and into flexible and realistic thinking as well. But the role of positive emotion, I think, is really interesting to just stop and think about. We know what the role of negative emotions are, right? Negative emotions keep us safe. They tell us about risk and danger. They tell us about signs of illness. They tell us what's wrong. So what is the important, what's the role of positive emotion then? What does it mean? Well, when neuroscientists look at the brain now, and they can, got these amazing machines that can attach electrodes to our brain and look at what's going on. When they look at the brain with somebody that's experiencing positive emotion, they see that their intellectual resources are improved. They're better problem solvers. They're better at thinking creatively and laterally. They're able to integrate new information. There's a lovely little study that was where they sat people in front of a screen and they sent out objects. So, I don't know, it might be all sorts of different things, a house, an animal, a car, all sorts of different things. One group, they got them to do something that allowed them to feel good, to experience positive emotion beforehand, and the others they did the opposite and actually did things that made them feel negative emotion. So one of them might have watched a funny film and the other ones might have watched something that was a lot more sort of real and hard hitting. And the group that had experienced the positive emotion, they were feeling good when they went into that test. They were far more likely to notice camel as a form of transport than the group that didn't, because they could not only realise that a camel is an animal, yes, but it's also a mode of transport. So, just one example of how our intellectual resources are improved when we're experiencing positive emotion. Those people that experience more positive emotion in their lives live longer. They have better cardiovascular health, better general health. And it's really interesting because I think the link between physical health and emotional health is increasing. It's a really big area of study, and we know that those people that look after their mental health have better physical health, and those that look after their physical health have better mental health. And I think one of the connections there is this idea that those people that take intentional activity to look after their emotional health and recognize the role of positive emotion in all of that, that's what plays into having better general health. Those people that have even a diagnosed illness, those that are able to deal with that illness and still experience positive emotion, still take intentional activity, they're going to have either both a better experience, and that sounds a weird thing to say when you have a diagnosis of something, you've got to deal with an illness, but then they have a better experience of it, and they are more likely to get through that illness quicker. So it really matters in terms of our physical resources. Those that experience more positive emotion have longer, stronger relationships, whether that's civil relationships, whether that's marriage, whether that's friendships, whether that's work relationships. And it sort of makes sense, because if I'm experiencing positive emotion, if I'm feeling good, I'm much more attractive to other, I don't mean attractive as in how I look, but, my body language, my shoulders are back, my eye contact, I'm often more comfortable in what I'm saying. And so it sort of makes sense. But also I'm more likely to make new friends when I'm in that situation, So, not only do my friends warm to me if I'm feeling, experiencing positive emotion, I'm much more likely to make new friends. And human connections matter, our relationships matter. And I think it's interesting as we get older that we sort of stop reaching out to find new friends, don't we? We sort of, when do we do that? We get friends at school, and then we get friends at work, and sort of any of the clubs and things we join. But do we make an active role in increasing our human connection? And I think COVID has been really interesting because, they talked about social distancing, which used to, annoy the hell out of me, really, because we weren't socially distant, we were physically distant, but our social interactions still really mattered. And the role of positive emotion in all of that will really help strengthen the relationships that we've got already, and to extend them to new ones. And the last area is our psychological resources. So those people that experience more positive emotion, it keeps them goal orientated, and not only about identifying goals, but also sticking to them and staying with it for the long haul. So our resilience, our ability to be able to not only bounce back from situations, but also to be able to make the most of opportunities. So our the optimistic muscle, being able to notice the good things in the world, are much more likely if I'm someone who knows how to experience positive emotion. So it's not just a nice to have when all the difficult things are happening. The role of positive emotion is actually a strategy, is actually something, hold on a minute. So if I do things that allow me to experience more positive emotion in my life, I'm going to improve all of these resources that are available to me. So what are the ways in which we can really harness positive emotion? And these things can also help to dial down negative emotions as well. So all of the things that we talk about at Bounce Forward are both, for both experiencing positive emotion and also for dealing with negative emotions, because all emotions matter, all of them. It's not about trying to pretend that the world is wonderful and nothing bad is going to happen. That would not be realistic, would it? That wouldn't be part of our competency of flexible and realistic thinking. But what are the strategies that I can start to build and learn and try and practice that are going to enable me to sort of take that intentional activity? And the first is anything that we can do in a bodily way. So breathing exercises, mindfulness, muscle relaxation, all of those things when we just take a moment to take a breath, to calm down, to use our body to ground us, to center us, and to create that sort of sense of calm and peacefulness. The second area is all the things that we can do cognitively. Our brains are amazing. We actually know very, very little about the brain, even with all of the advances in neuroscience. But cognitively, we can distract ourselves. We can play mental games, go through the alphabet from A to Z and think of a letter for a country for every letter of the alphabet. I guarantee by the time you sort of get to M or N, you will have forgotten, whatever it is that was on your mind, and you will be more focused on that. And so it's a strategy for really being able to sort of, harness those positive emotions, to switch the channel. Focus on something that brings real joy to you. Go outside and really pay attention. Put all of your cognitive brain power into focusing on the good things. Connection. And I always pause at connection, because we all know that a problem shared is a problem halved. So, you know, absolutely a strategy for harnessing positive emotion is talking to our friends. It's just talking to other people, and not about problems, but just about the world and our day. And our, you know, it's one of the things that I say to young people who we know spend a lot of time on technology. If you've gone a whole day and you've not seen another human being, and I mean face-to-face eye contact with another human being that you know, that's a little bit of a red flag. You know, make sure tomorrow that you do that. Because, you know, that idea of communicating and talking and connecting with other human beings matters. But I always pause at connection, because I think even though we know that a problem shared is a problem halved, reaching out and talking to each other about our problems can be difficult. So I think, you know, recognizing the idea of how do we create safety around being able to talk about when we've got problems. It's difficult for me, even for someone who's studied this for a long time now, for two main reasons. The first is I don't want to burden people with my problems, because I think they've got enough on their plate. But the second, and the real reason why I find it hard, is because if I do reach out to somebody else and then they don't give me back what I need, I feel let down. And so now I'm vulnerable, because there's a vulnerability in me reaching out to tell someone that I'm not feeling very good today, and then I've not got back what I need. And so therefore I've then damaged something in that relationship, and I'm still feeling vulnerable. So it's hard for me to do it. So one of the things that I do when I'm reaching out to people about a problem, I know we're talking about positive emotion here, but that's a way, you know, talking through our problems can be a route to feeling better and feeling good. One of the things I do is I give it a time limit, and I say to the other person, look, I've got something I want to talk to you about, but I only wanted to talk about it for 10 minutes. And I actually want us to time us, so that I've got, when that bell goes off, I want us to stop talking about it. And then I'm also really clear with the other person what it is that I want from them. So, you know, I want them to help me just give your perspective of it. I want you to tell me what you think I should do, or I don't want you to tell me what I should want. I just want you to listen to me. So these parameters give me a framework, if you like, that means that if we sort of go off a tangent and my friend starts telling, I say, well, hold on a minute, that's great, but we agreed, you know, this is all I can cope with now, sort of thing. It gives me that sort of framework around it. And you know, and as I say, sometimes doing that is then the route to positive emotion. But just talking, you know, being with other people and connecting with other people is a fantastic strategy for harnessing positive emotion. The fourth area is just around our imagination. So again, you know, our minds are amazing tools, and you know, so create a really vivid visual image of a safe space. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Who else is there with me? What are we doing? What are we talking about? What can we hear? What can we smell? Really vivid. Draw it, you know, create a way to create this really vivid image of it, because then you can go there in your heads whenever you want to. And the last area is all of the physical things that we do. So, you know, exercise, sleep, nutrition, these things matter. And you will know on a day when you've had what I call a pig out day, you know, one of those days where you've, you know, eaten all the bad things, you know, that you can eat, you know, by the end of the day, you're not only feeling sluggish, but your mood is probably dropped, because you have those peaks when you know, like me, it will be something chocolate, it will peak, but then afterwards you've got that come down. So, you know, all of that bad food that we eat, you know, doesn't help us in terms of our positive emotion. So really thinking about our nutrition and noticing what we eat and the impact of it, you know, really matters in terms of positive emotion. So positive emotion is not just a nice to do when all of the other things are finished. Positive emotion is a strategy. And here are some top tips that I want to leave you with. The first is have a bank of things that fall into these categories, and have 5 things that fall into each of these categories, and things that you've practiced that you know work for you, and then use them. right? Include different time commitments. So things that last 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes, because positive emotion, if you're about to walk into that meeting or about to walk into that sort of difficult conversation or into a test of some sort, then doing something before that allows you to really experience positive emotion that you know matters for you, works for you, is going to be better use of your time than worrying about it before you know what I mean? It's much better to do something, because remember what it does to your intellectual resources. Include things that will work in different scenarios. So yes, things that will work at work, but different scenarios at work, because all sorts of different things happen to us, don't they? But also think about things that will work in your home life. As well, around those sort of social, family, friends, and our more social side of our lives. Test them, practice them, decide to keep them or decide to bin them. But make sure that you have a range of things. Make sure that you've got a range of things that you know that by just doing them is going to allow you to experience positive emotion. Because then on the times when you're not, you can just start to flick that switch and you will develop that muscle. The more you do it, the more you test them, the more you practice them in different times, that the more authentic they will feel to you, the more like you it will just become, the more competent you will become in the role of positive emotion. So thank you very much for your time. If you're interested in sort of psychological fitness, particularly from a positive psychology base, here are some books, some great books, very, very accessible, and just sort of really some of the reading that I've done over the years. And I wanted to just finish by saying that we are a charity in the UK at the moment, and my aim is to get our work into every school. I mean, first of all in England, but the world is small. If you work for an organisation that you think cares about the things psychological fitness for the children of tomorrow, or the adults of tomorrow, the children of today and the adults of tomorrow, please consider us as part of that sort of corporate responsibility piece. We're a charity which isn't necessarily a front end charity. We are wanting to work universally to try and shift and change education and to build psychological fitness lessons into our core education, and we need help to be able to do that. So if you work for an organisation that you think that this would matter to, please get in contact with us. It's just bounceforward.com. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good rest of your day, and most importantly, please look after your psychological fitness.